I'm a big believer that creating with emerging tech takes the right vision and the right perspective, especially with technology like generative AI, where it's so easy and it feels like anybody can go out there, type a sentence, type a description, and then boom, they have art. But if you have seen that art, it starts to get a little tiresome after a while. Prompting in of itself is its own art form. That may sound a little controversial to you, but the truth is every medium was once created, right? Like you take, for example, painting. We know that painting and artistry goes back to prehistoric times. We will never have a record on how someone discovered the ability to draw on a wall. And we will never know that very first moment. But we do know that it has evolved. It evolved during the Renaissance, especially when canvas started to become a popular method of painting. If you weren't aware, before the canvas was invented, before it came out, the painters during the Renaissance used to use wood panels. They'd have to spend a lot of time prepping those wood panels to paint on. There was a lot of resistance during that time. Paneling had become deeply respected, and the introduction of the canvas was seen by some as the deviation from these traditions. And the introduction of the canvas was seen by some as a deviation from these traditions. In fact, the craftsmanship was seen as lesser than. Instead of taking hours and meticulously refining and redoing a wood panel, you could just simply paint on a canvas that was traditionally found on tents and used as sails. That seemed like a very weird concept during that period of time. Not only was it weird, it was very radical thinking. Anytime something radical and new comes about, people have a hard time wrapping their minds around it because it's change. And we all know everyone is afraid of change. During periods of change, a lot of things are uncertain. And during the Renaissance, during the transition to the canvas, there were durability concerns. Wood paneling had proven that it can last. They knew what weather would do to it. The radical, life-changing idea of painting on a canvas was, well, uncertain. They didn't know what weather was going to do to it. They didn't know how it was going to affect the paints. So the durability and ability to last a long time was a big, giant question mark. And then there was the quality of the canvas during this period of time. The quality varied dramatically, which would then affect the perception of the artwork and therefore the price, its value. Whereas wood paneling, it was fairly consistent. You had a good idea of what it was going to be. And then, of course, you have the market dynamics. The general consumer of art during that period of time also resisted the canvas. And an artist during that time was definitely taking a risk by painting on canvas and trying to sell it to your average patron. Radical changes don't go over well. And this brings me to the fact that we are at the beginning of radical change now. Creating with generative AI is very different than the transition from a wood panel to canvas, but the mentality is the same. The initial resistance of thinking that generative AI is radical and now anybody can be an artist. But honestly, if you've seen a lot of generic AI art, you can tell who the artists are and who the artists are not, right? So much of it has its own footprint, its own style, you could say. And you can see which ones are lazy, and those in general are just going to be rejected. The truth is, much like the canvas, this revolution is here, and it's not going away, and it moves fast. So approaching generative AI as a creator, as an artist, with the right perspective is going to do you and the world, honestly, a lot of good. It's the perspective of speed. It's the perspective of productivity, and it is the perspective of new skills. Traditionally, as artists, many of us don't have the time nor the skill sets to do everything we want to do. Like, as a writer, you may be able to draw, but maybe you don't do it really well. Or maybe you do both really well, but how often do you have the time to do both? Using AI in the right way to create drawings for your writing can go a long way. And within time, it's only going to get easier. And I really want to focus on that. That's where my perspective is coming from. I am focused on making sure that me creating is not done lazily. I see AI as a great creative companion, as a second brain in some cases to do things that I don't want to do. I've spent a lot of time training my AI to think like me or understand how to respond to me, understand what I want. I've been training a GPT for a little while on a story, on a world that I'm trying to create. You've seen some of the imagery if you follow me on my socials. I've gone into great detail in my mind in creating the look, the style, the characters, the personalities. And yes, I've bounced ideas off of ChatGPT. I've gone back and forth and developed and redeveloped things and started to plug it in as a PDF, as a guide. And so I use this GPT now to help me create, help me write, help me draw, do it efficiently so I can do much more. I often take the images and take the writing and I rewrite it or I give it notes the same way I would give a collaborator notes, except it's not costing me money and it's not costing me as much time. If you train your AI the right way and get them to think like you and understand your creative needs and understand the skills that you don't have that it has, well, that can go a very long way in creation. If you like my perspective, then please feel free to subscribe, like, comment, and I'll see you in the next one.